I'm Natasha Devon. I'm an author, campaigner, and broadcaster, and I'm going to be talking about managing complex emotions.
During this mini-series, I'm going to be unpacking some complex emotions with various guests. Why do you think we often shy away from talking about emotions like anger and jealousy?
I think there's two elements to it. One is the social acceptability of those emotions. We're taught from a really early age that if we feel certain things, that makes us a bad person. And then I also think that sometimes the strength of those emotions can scare us a little bit. So we feel maybe that we don't want to lean into them because we're not quite sure what will happen.
And why do you think that young people might find dealing with these sorts of emotions particularly challenging?
Well, we feel everything really acutely in our teens. And it used to be that there was this stereotype around, teenagers are full of hormones and they're just really over dramatic about everything. It actually, scientists have found it has relatively little to do with your hormones, and it's actually to do with your brain development. It can feel like a roller coaster of emotions. And if we were able to accurately remember that, it would be really scary. But for some reason, lots of people kind of hit 25 and just get immediate amnesia about what it was like.
And we all experience these sorts of emotions, anger and fear or jealousy from time to time. When might these emotions become a particular problem for someone?
I think that the best way that I've heard it described is it's like a traffic light. So if you deal with an emotion when it first pops up, you're on green and you can move forward. If you try and squash it down, you'll move to amber and then to red. And it's really important to remember that you can't destroy energy and that emotions are energy. So if you try and push something to the back of your mind or ignore it and hope it'll go away, it will come out, but it won't necessarily come out in a way that is appropriate or that you're particularly proud of. So I would always recommend articulating something when you first experience it, or trying to make sense of it at least, rather than going, oh, I don't like that, I'm going to push that away.
So when you are feeling angry or you're feeling jealous or you're dealing with something like grief, almost being able to articulate that to another friend or another person can be helpful because it sort of makes you cognizant of that emotion.
You don't have to talk about it either. I mean, some people really love talking and other people, they find it really intense and awkward and they don't get much out of it. The important thing is the expression of the emotion, the communication of the emotion. So if you find, for example, that something like music, dance, drama, art, sports is a better way of you kind of getting things out, that's perfectly legitimate. And those activities actually have a measurable positive impact on our mental health as well. So it's a win-win, really.
People often talk about building resilience. What does this mean to you, and is it important?
I find that people often talk about resilience as though it's an attitude that people can choose to switch on. So I hear adults saying, oh, young people should just be more resilient, or we should teach them to be more resilient. And that's a fundamental misunderstanding of what resilience is. Resilience is a byproduct of being well supported. And it is a combination of, yes, having tools in your toolkit to deal with the challenges that life will throw at you. But it's also things like, do you have someone in your life that you could talk to if things went wrong? Do you feel that you have a strong sense of community, a strong sense of belonging? Do you know what you would do if things went wrong? Do you have a kind of clear chain of command? All of these things contribute to resilience. I've had an anxiety disorder since I was 10, but I managed it really well when I was at school. I was incredibly resilient. This was before people really spoke about mental health. It was certainly before people spoke about resilience, but it's because I was well supported. I had a good friendship group. I liked my teachers. My teachers had a lot of time for us, and I felt safe. And being in that environment allowed me to be resilient. So I think we need to change maybe the nature of the conversations we're having.
And what do you think the first step to dealing with some of these complex emotions might be?
I think the first step is acknowledging them. And there's no emotion that is shameful. It's how we deal with them that is the important thing. And also acknowledging that it looks different on different people as well. Like, take grief, for example. We all deal with bereavement in a different way. And there's so much pushback at the moment against this idea of there being 5 stages or 7 stages, depending on which book you read, of grief, and that it's kind of formulaic in that way. Because actually it so much depends on your relationship with that person, what they meant to you, the role they fulfill in your life and your circumstances. Sometimes the healthiest thing that we can do is just sit with an emotion and experience it, even though it's unpleasant. I think so often we think we have to be happy all the time. And if we're not happy all the time, there's something wrong. But actually just experiencing unpleasant emotions and sort of riding them out, the ability to do that is a really key component of being mentally healthy.
And being emotional is quite stigmatized. Why is talking about difficult emotions important, do you think?
We need to be more specific about what we mean when it comes to mental and emotional health, because I think at the moment what's happening is, and this is an extent why it's stigmatized, if somebody says they're feeling anxious, we immediately go, oh, they've probably got a mental health problem. They probably need to see a doctor. And, anxiety is just a normal thing that all human beings experience. And you might have an anxiety disorder, but equally you might not. And being able to explain it in a way that clearly communicates what precisely you're going through and what's needed, it is going to be, I think, the most important thing for mental health conversations moving forward. And I also think that there is this stereotype that has some truth to it, that boys and men are less likely to talk about their mental health and therefore should be encouraged to open up. But I think it's really important when you look at gender and mental health, you do see patterns on average, but an average is a midpoint within a range of possibility. And it's by no means definite that you will fall within that average. So you may be gender non-conforming, or you may fall somewhere else along the gender spectrum. And I think the worst thing that we can do is take those patterns and apply it to absolutely everyone that we meet and go, oh, you're a boy, so clearly you're not comfortable talking about your mental health, because, that boy might be. And certainly a lot of the conversations I'm having with teenage boys at the moment, they're saying, I feel really comfortable talking about my mental health, particularly compared to my dad or my granddad or, the older men in my life. And that's something that we should really be celebrating, I think.
And my final question to you really is, do you have any recommendations or favorite TV programs or books for people who are watching this that might help them to negotiate these sort of difficult and complex emotions in their life?
I always find that the times when I'm struggling with my mental health are the times when I least want to read a mental health book. I prefer to kind of lose myself in fiction when I'm feeling anxious. But you can find books where there are characters who are maybe going through something with their mental health, and it kind of allows you to explore those options. So I'd particularly recommend Sarah Barnard, Juno Dawson and Holly Bourne. All 3 of them write amazing young adult novels, and there are a lot of mental health themes running through their work. And also I'd recommend taking a look at my website, natashadevon.com. There's a page called Advice and Support where you can find trusted sources of information and charities that have confidential helplines and text lines and things like this. So yeah, do have a poke around on there if there's anything useful.